Hi, my name is Jo Hadley, and this is my podcast, Being a Human Lighthouse. I wasn't able to do this podcast last week because, for the umpteenth time in about 15 months, I moved house. And I didn't have access to the internet for a few days. And it was very interesting, despite the fact I do a lot of meditating and I connect to the collective field. It's interesting how much of my life is lived and is requiring the access to the technological field of the internet. It made me reflect on this past 15 to 18 months. It's interesting, I've been on this spiritual path for decades now. Of course, it was much slower to start with because there was no such thing as the internet. And I just had books, eventually got into meditation. But my path has been exponentially accelerating. Probably the last 10 years, definitely the last 7 years. And it just seems like when I think everything's changed enough, it just jumps exponentially. And 15 months ago, I was nearing the end of a year-long program of compassion inquiry, a professional year-long course, which teaches you yourself to inquire into your own traumas and patterns, because the deeper you go into observing and understanding and being aware of your own patterns, the deeper you can help someone else. That's the basis of compassionate inquiry. So it was a year, a really intense year of going within. I already was doing this. The meditation I do, the work I have been reading about, especially from David Hawkins, and many of the books I've been reading, even my meditation training, is very somatic based, very much about releasing energy and patterns and beliefs. So I was already doing this, but this year, that particular year with compassion inquiry, just intensified it because we had to do so much practice, so much inner work. And around that time, I learnt about this book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. Gabor Mate, who's the inspiration of the Compassion Inquiry course, recommended this book, and his technique clearly takes a lot from the presence process. So it's a 10-week course, and it says your life will change once you commit to this 10 weeks. So I'd just finished the first 10 weeks of doing this presence process, and I'd just come back from a 4-day intensive sort of trauma pattern releasing in Los Angeles with Kyle Cease, Kim Duramo, and Aaron Abke. It was a very high intensity energy release session, similar to compassion inquiry, but different. So these three things were all happening to me at the same time, along with my intention that I wanted to live from my heart and soul. Completely, 100%. So these three factors united to when I got home, my entire life changed. Everything got ripped away. Now, I've heard people describe this before, and of course, you always think it's not going to happen to you, that it's just going to be a nice, gradual unfolding that's pleasant, with a few, unpleasant moments and unpleasant days when all the gungy energy comes up and you sit with it, or you get some assistance from a therapist with it. You meditate through it, but eventually it just goes easily. Next step. That's how it's been pretty much for me, most of my pathway. But the universe decided that I needed a quantum leap like no other. So it took everything. My job disappeared. My hands suddenly had issues that I could no longer use them for the work that I was doing, which was more somatic base. I was getting into releasing the traumas and energies from the body and learning more and more how to do this. I was wanting to transition away from hands-on work and do it without hands, which now that's what I'm focusing on learning. But the universe decided no more hands-on work for me. No more going back to standard physiotherapy jobs, because I'd often go back to physiotherapy and used that while I was retraining and working more in this fascia and trying to develop this somatic-based release work. And I lost my home, so I had to move. And I was studying. So it wasn't so simple just to get a job, because everything was based upon this studying, and I'd put a lot of money into it, and I didn't want to lose that. And this study was pushing me forward into where I was evolving and developing into. Again, I was trying to evolve from being just a pure physiotherapist into using my hands and my knowledge as a physio, but also incorporating counselling, compassion inquiry, releasing these energies from the body, because our body is like a library. The body is like a library of all the unprocessed, unacknowledged energies, patterns, traumas, and beliefs from not only our life, in this current life, but from our maternal ancestors, our paternal ancestors, on our mother and father side, so genetically, because if our ancestors haven't dealt with their traumas and patterns and beliefs, it gets passed on epigenetically. And sometimes we have these issues and we don't know why we've got them, but it's thanks to being passed down through the genes. We also have a soul line, because we have a soul as well that's lived many different lives where it's accumulated. And if you've looked at human history, it's not exactly a paradise yet. So there's lots of energies that we haven't resolved that get brought into our life via the soul line as well. So we have these three lines that are contributing to our perceptions, our beliefs, our patterns, traumas, how we go through the world. And up until fairly recently, we haven't really had much idea about how these three lines are impacting us. We just have these stories and we're trying to solve the circumstances. But for me, thanks to my heart, knowing that there was something more, and drawing me to people who also must have had the same idea and have created therapies, like there's Gabor Mate has created compassion inquiry. There's somatic experiencing. There's internal family systems. They're just three of these psychoanalytical tools that allow people to access this library of suppressed and repressed energies and patterns and beliefs that are held in our body. And until we become aware of a pattern or a belief, it stays unread in our body and can contribute to our health, it can contribute to our relationships, and it can contribute to how our life unfolds in many ways. A lot of the circumstances that happen to us, the patterns that keep repeating in our life. So once we become aware of these patterns and we learn to integrate them safely, we then no longer have that book, or that energy book, left on the shelf of our body. And we then become a little bit lighter. We get a little bit closer to our true self, our inner self. Because once all these books are read, what is left is our soul, our higher self. There's nothing blocking access to it anymore. And there's amazing people. I've described and talked about like three of the different therapies, but there's also Thomas Hübl that has done a lot of work into the ancestral aspect of trauma and patterns and how they influence our body. And all of them use somatic sensations to release the energy. David Hawkins has written many books describing how dealing with these emotions and the feelings and sensations around the emotions or the triggers, because that's what triggers are, they create an emotional reaction. And once we can non-judgmentally with curiosity, be able to observe and non-react and respond differently to these emotional triggers within our body. And these emotional triggers represent the unread books, the unread energy. So once we've actually learnt to neutralize those energies, which we do by firstly becoming aware, we cannot change anything without becoming aware. And then it's a matter of learning to be able to recognize when all this gungy stuff comes up. Because a lot of times when we go the spiritual path, we do want peace. We do want to feel unconditional love. But as we start to let go of things, what happens is we get this peace. But then the body feels safe enough and it allows this gungy stuff to come up. Or if we're in the presence of a person or a place of high vibrational energy and consciousness, that can also stimulate these energies to come to the surface. And they're unpleasant. The stuff that's held within our body that's suppressed and repressed is usually very unpleasant. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, and of course we have to do it. Sometimes a teaspoon at a time. Sometimes we can do it alone, and sometimes we might need the help of a therapist or some other professional to assist us in gently and safely letting it go. There's no one way. A lot of it has to be done on our own. We have to know the path, but there are times and places when we need assistance. We need to do it safely, because if we get overwhelmed, we just basically fill up the library with more books of energy that need to be released. So it has to be done gently. But as I'm discovering that the more of this tar that falls off, the more I actually start to access my own inner wisdom and access my own soul, I can actually start to tune in to the heart center, and that can assist in releasing some of these energies. And by asking my higher self to assist me, or spirit to assist me, can help the process. I know for me, I've read many books. I feel like I've understood much of the things that I've read in the past few decades. But it's interesting, in the past few years, it's almost like a little switch has flicked in my mind or my heart, and I understand them on a deeper level. And it's funny because if different teachers or different people will say it differently, and sometimes it just hits these aha moments. David Hawkins' books, which I've read for years now, and a really great way of accessing and understanding how to use the body's energy and somatics and release them for health and also just for relationships. He's got a great way of describing the levels of consciousness that he was studying when he was alive. His work is kind of a foundational element, and his work of releasing the emotions, and he often says that actually dealing with the emotion, that emotional charge, is the only thing we really have to do with anything. I always found his books didn't quite go into enough detail. I thought I understood them, but I would love to have asked him. But unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He passed away, I think, in 2012. I may be wrong, but I think it was 2012. But then I was listening to David Clemens talk, and he just said something about how whenever his body gets close to high-level consciousness or energy, it feels peaceful, but then it also allows the next layer of patterns and personal issues to come to the surface, to which he then asks his higher self to assist him to become aware of and to integrate. And something about how he said it just made me realize on a higher level what David Hawkins had been saying. And it was like my understanding jumped to a new level. And I always find that fascinating, because it always makes me feel like, a bit judgy, that I'm thinking I must have been a bit silly before. I didn't see it before in this new way. But that would be very judgmental, wouldn't it? So I'm just curious of how, as we go, we're just unraveling. We're getting to higher levels. It is like school, when you're in grade 1 and you're suddenly learning what letters are and what writing is, and you start to read your first sentences. It's amazing. But before you've handled that, if someone gave you War and Peace to read, you wouldn't know what to do with it. So it's interesting, as you start to learn the skills, the next layer, the next level becomes more obvious and easier to understand. So this past week has had me reflecting once more on how this very strange 15 months has been unfolding. Thankfully, it has settled down in the last 4 months. But even so, when I've moved states, I've still had to move home about 3 times. So at the moment, it's a little bit more settled for longer. And the reason is I moved down to Tasmania. It's a long way to move. And I thought moving my furniture down here without being 100% committed to knowing if I'm going to stay here, because the universe has been so unsettled, I didn't want to move everything down just to move it all the way back up again. Because I'm aware that my life is shifting and changing very quickly all the time. Even the work that I'm doing here part-time has been almost just poking me in the areas that I still need work on. I realize how I respond when I get put under time pressure. Because when I work for myself or when I do things for myself, I'm laid back. I take my time. I'm calm and peaceful. But if you put me under a time pressure of work, I go, I notice these stress responses. And I've become aware of how I'm responding. And I've had to pull myself back, remind myself, because when I get busy and stressed, I realize, whoa, you've been forgetting to breathe. You've been forgetting to do some of your presencing. So it's made me stop, pause, take a bit of time, tune in, and breathe. And I think I've shared before that sometimes I will sit, take some breaths at lunchtime, ask my higher self to help me through the rest of the day. And often the rest of the day just unfolds and things get done really, really easily, while I was stressing like crazy in the morning. So I love it when I put things into practice. And yes, this work I've been doing has definitely been, I'm going to say, just pushing a few of my buttons that I thought I'd actually healed. But I recognize that under pressure needs a little bit more refinement. But we're all learning, we're all growing. There is no there. Well, if we do get there, I'll let you know what happens on the other side. If there's more. But I think it's a way before we get there. And for me, the there is when all of humanity has actually reached Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness. When all of us reach that level, there should theoretically be no more faulty beliefs, traumas, or patterns blocking us. We would just be fully connected, each to our own souls and inner wisdom. We would then be much more heart-centered, work together in community, create together on a much higher level. I can only imagine what it would be like if we all worked from a pure heart center with no faulty perceptions and beliefs and issues blocking us and creating challenges. I can imagine it's a little way down the road yet. So until I get there and we all get there, I shall just keep going within and doing my part. Because as each of us let go and we integrate these energy books from our own body library, we're adding it to we're actually changing the collective, because all of us are energetically connected to the earth, to the unified field. And as each one of us does a little bit of healing, we all get lifted up that little bit. It seems imperceptible, but as more and more happens and more people change, it will get more obvious how it's changing and how much easier it is. And the more people who do this, it makes it easier for everyone following. It's always a little bit harder and a little bit slower for the early uptakers. And I've generally always been an early uptaker. So, to finish off this week, I shall do a bit of my mindfulness healing meditation. The aim of this and the intention of this meditation is just to tune in to our higher selves and to assist us gently to release whatever patterns are ready to be let go of right now. If you'd like to do this with me, I just invite you to get comfortable. Either sit or lie down. If it's comfortable and you prefer, close your eyes. And maybe you like to put your hands over your heart, because it's the heart center that is the key to not only our physical ability to be calm and present and be in a healing space and be regulated, but it's all the access point for the soul. Just become aware of the surface you're sitting on or lying on. Just feel your body resting on this surface. Become aware of your feet. If they're on the floor, you can wiggle your toes. Maybe imagine there's cords running from the center of your soles to the center of the earth. So you're truly connecting to the energy of Gaia and all that the earth provides in the physical plane. Maybe you're noticing what your hands are touching or feeling. Maybe you can feel the clothes on your skin. Now I invite you to just imagine you've got this cord going from the crown of your head to the center of the universe, to the singularity, the great central sun, to source, however you wish to think of it. Know you're connected above to all that is, and below to earth and all it can provide physically. And you're the bridge from the spirit and universe above to the earth below. And as you breathe in, just notice your breath and be aware that as you breathe in, every cell is being lit up by wisdom, light, information from the source energy, from your soul. And every time you breathe out, you're letting go of toxins, faulty beliefs, patterns, traumas, energies you no longer need. So breathing in, imagine every cell filling up with light, love, information, wisdom. And breathing out, everything that no longer serves you. You may like to imagine that you're breathing in and out through this heart center. You may feel like your whole body is lighting up as you breathe in. Now, I just invite you to just notice your body. Are there any areas of unpleasant sensations? Or maybe they're pleasant sensations. Just become aware of any sensations that are occurring within your body. They may have emotions attached to them. They may not. Just notice the sensations. The more unpleasant sensations, know that you're safe because you're sitting or lying. You're just feeling energy. So often the unpleasant sensations can be part of that library that's held within your body. And when your body and your higher self feels it's safe enough, one of these books of energy will bubble to the surface. And if you're feeling anything unpleasant right now, just be aware that it's one of those unpleasant books of energy. It just wants you to be aware of it without judgment. Just be curious as you're sitting or lying safely, observing it. Be curious about it. You can ask your higher self to assist you in integrating it and releasing. Know that you're safe. If sensations are too unpleasant or too overwhelming, just open your eyes. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your hands and what they're touching. Just ground yourself in your five senses. But if it's not overwhelming, I invite you to stay with the unpleasant sensation. Just notice it. You can breathe into it low and slow. Not trying to change it, but as you breathe in low and slow, you're helping to regulate the nervous system, which can assist it to shift. But don't try to force it to change. Just be willing to observe it with non-judgment and curiosity. It's an energy that just requires your attention. Maybe it changes as you notice it and look at it. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it gets less. Maybe it intensifies. It's all okay. You're safely sitting or lying, just observing an unpleasant sensation. And remember, you can breathe into it, low and slow. You can fill up the light and information and love into it. What happens if it feels that? Or you can request assistance from your higher self or spirit to help you to shift it. Now I invite you to again place your hand on your heart if it's not still there. Take 3 low, slow, conscious breaths in and out through the heart center. Just filling up every cell again with light, love, and information. And as you breathe out, you're letting go of everything you no longer need. And once you've done the 3rd breath, keep breathing this way in and out through the heart center. But I invite you to just imagine what it would feel like when you breathe in and fill up with light and love and information. What it would be like if you could live from your heart center, connected to your soul. If you could do what really lit you up, how would it feel? Would it feel expansive? Would it feel joyful? Would it feel peaceful? What would it feel like if you were just living from your heart, the life of your dreams? Because if we're living from our soul, it's going to be the life of our dreams. There may be challenges, but mostly we're going to be expressing joy, love, peace. We'll be expanding. We'll be lit up from within. What would it feel like to be lit up from within? Can you imagine it? Is it too difficult to imagine? Just the attempt is enough. Just feel how much light and love and peace, joy you would feel. Maybe you see yourself in your mind's eye doing something that would tell you that you're connected to your soul. Maybe you're just being connected, being at peace, being joyful. Now, as this meditation comes to a close, I just invite you just to tune back in to feeling your body as it's sitting on the chair. Again, wiggle your toes and fingers. You might want to shuffle a little bit in the chair. And when you're ready, you can just gently open your eyes. And just tune in to your body. Has anything changed? Do you feel lighter? Have some unread books of energy bubble to the surface and stayed there? Have you had any flashes of insight from your inner wisdom? Or maybe nothing's changed at all. Just check in and be aware. And until next week, have a great week, and may you connect to yourself deeper and deeper every day and feel more love, more peace, and have less books of energy stored in the library of your body. Until next week, bye for now.